3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of Full Press Radio. This is April the 25th, 2022. With you today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
Give me a second. I'm just going to pause the show that I'm watching, and I'm good to go.
We're recording a podcast, Nick.
I know. I'm pausing it. I'm still catching up from last week.
Raccoons?
There's a lot of raccoons on YouTube. A lot.
So
of the children's show. You know what? I didn't get very far. I watched the first few, and it was definitely a jolt of nostalgia. Visually. Story-wise, I think I said this to you midweek. Like, there's not much there from a storyline perspective in this show, but it sounds like we got a lot of traction on it last week. A lot of people remembered it.
Yeah, people all over the world, from Canada to the UK, people have watched Raccoons, and I mean, you can confirm this, but I have no idea why anyone watched this show.
Well, like that one raccoon with the red sweater with the yellow R on it, I feel like, I don't know, like there's something about in my head where like that was the character I related to as a kid. But now I'm like, first of all, this guy's voice is, whoa, what's going on there? Can't stand it. Nails on a chalkboard. Second of all, some of the actions these characters take make zero sense. None.
So you're telling me that the choices of raccoons are not the best?
There's a lot of choices that are not the best in the show. You know what I will say though is a good choice? The music. The music is awesome. It's 80s, right? So it's got this like weird video game bass line going throughout the whole thing. Anytime the words come in, it's cheesy as heck and it's awful. But the music itself is not bad.
That's what you want, right? At least there's some redeeming qualities in this. So I went ahead and I looked up who this person is who did the voices, because I mean, most of the times on these shows it's like one person who does all the voices, right?
Yeah. Well,
this show was the main character, whose name is Bert, who has a B on his sweater for Bert, obviously. Yeah. Did voices all over the place. He was in Care Bears. He was in Raccoons. He was in X-Men. And also, though, it states that he was in Street Fighter, but also says that he's a former professional athlete. So I'm curious, how far does this?
Is he also, sorry, we should say his name. Who is this actor?
Len Carlson.
All right. So let's give him credit where it's due. Sounds like he had a pretty busy voice acting career. Is he Canadian?
Yes. Yeah, he's from Edmonton.
Oh. Are the Care Bears a Canadian show?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It could be. A lot of these cartoons we watched as kids, like as a kid, you don't realize you're watching like CBC or something.
Exactly. For
and then
sure.
All these years later, I find out that it's a Canadian show.
I cannot find. Ooh, here we go. He was I don't know who he is or was as an athlete, but apparently he was a former professional athlete. So There you go. Turns out when you search Len Carlson, you get a lot of Leon Draisaitl, John Carlson articles.
It's almost like your algorithm's tailored to you.
Almost like they know what I'm looking for. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Raccoons to someone?
Like a 3 out of 10.
Not good.
And I wouldn't recommend it to someone who is much younger than me.
Okay.
The only way I'd recommend it is like, do you remember this show? You should go check it out. It's all on YouTube.
Right. Okay. So only for nostalgia. That's the only reason someone should watch this.
Yes.
All right. Well, there we go. Not only are we in a world where Nick and everyone else was reminded of Raccoons this week, we're also in the final week of the NHL regular season. This time next week, we will have playoffs ready. I'm excited.
It's crazy how fast it's gone, but also how long it's taken.
I hear you.
Like the whole end of season here really caught me off guard. I thought we had another 2 weeks still.
Yeah, I fully agree. Like, I know that it should have started like 3 weeks ago already. Like, the first round should be done in the bag. Yet here we are. It starts on Monday. And yet I looked at the standings and I was like, this team only has 2 games left? What is happening?
Yeah. And the standings are not really settled yet.
No, they are very much not in some regards.
Yeah. A lot of things can change between now and next Monday.
Well, let's take a look at what some of those things are. The good news is that we're recording this on a Monday night. Literally nothing will change between now and when you listen to this if you're listening on Tuesday, because the NHL gave us 1 game tonight, and it is Blackhawks Flyers, the least relevant game. So let's start out in the West, because that's where I see a lot more potential. And I want to start with, let's get the quick hitters of what's locked up out of the way. The number one thing that's locked up is the Central Division matchup is guaranteed to be Blues and Wild. There is the home ice might change, but that is guaranteed to be an opening round matchup.
That's going to be a good series, I think.
I think so. Yeah. They're tied in points at the end of the season. It's going to be close. I think right now, with what I'm looking at, that would be my top pick to go 7 for sure. I
don't know why I feel this way, but I feel this is Minnesota's round or series to lose. I think they should be moving on from this.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm not at the point that I'm ready to make a pick, which is great because I still have 1 more week to sort that out. But I would probably, I think they have better goaltending.
Yeah.
Right? Jordan Binnington kind of fallen off this year. And so having, Talbot and Marc-Andre Fleury over there in Minnesota is going to be nice.
Absolutely. And both teams are going into the playoffs with a ton of momentum right now too. Minnesota has 3 games. St. Louis has 2 games left, but they're both on heaters right now. Minnesota's won 5 straight. St. Louis has won 3 straight. It's probably going to be, of all the series in the Western Conference, is probably going to be the tightest.
Not only that, not only have the Blues are on a 3-game heater, they have not lost in regulation since March 26th, a month without losing regulation. It's going to be tougher to beat either of these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think they're going to have whichever team wins, they're going to have a harder time in the second round.
Oh, yes.
But it's going to be a tight first round, man. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's settled. Okay, and we'll talk more about that in the matchup next week. So we've got that Colorado locked up, first overall seed. The Flames have locked up the division. Since we last chatted, the Oilers have also locked up their spot. And maybe this kind of will lead the questioning and kind of spoil a little bit of Elimination Station. So there are 3 spots left to be filled. Kings, Preds, and Stars. Knights are 3 points back of Vegas, but 6 points back of the Kings with only 3 games left. It feels like the Kings are
pretty much there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which would give them a spot against Edmonton.
Which would mean that they're playing Edmonton. Again, unlikely, because both wildcard teams are coming out of the Central as it stands. So kind of Oilers Kings is that matchup, which could be, is obviously going to be an interesting matchup, but I feel like that is the best case scenario for the Oilers.
That is absolutely the best case scenario for the Oilers. The only thing is the Kings are going into this as pure underdogs. Nobody's going to pick the Los Angeles Kings to win this series. And I think that there's a little bit of motivation in that. So that's where I think that they could be dangerous and they could be gritty and kind of I don't know. I have a hard time seeing a situation where they're moving on past Edmonton. But, similar to the Leafs in the East, Edmonton's a team that has struggled mightily with the playoffs recently.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So you never really know. I'd pick Edmonton, which is funny because it was only a few months ago where Edmonton was on like an 11-game losing streak or something. And everyone was asking a bunch of questions about them. And
I also got Dave Tippett fired. It's a big turning point in that season, right? You look at before and after. They're out of the playoffs then, losing 11 in a row, and to be back in, and not even just like sneaking as a wild card, to be firmly in shows what this team is capable of.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that leaves us, like I said, if we assume the Kings are in, that only leaves the wild card spots. There are technically, and I don't think one of these teams is eliminated. Are the Canucks eliminated? According to my quick math, they're not.
I thought I saw the Canucks were. The standings I'm looking at don't indicate if a team is eliminated or not. But let me look at this other standings, which also doesn't say it. I think they're eliminated, Carl.
Yes, they are. The Canucks are eliminated. With the, I'm not sure what it was that eliminated them, but they are eliminated. So leaves 3 teams fighting for 2 spots: Nashville, Dallas, and Vegas. Dallas, 3 points up on Vegas. Nashville, 4 points up on Vegas. All of them have 3 games remaining.
So Vegas they don't have to win out, but they need some help from these 2 teams ahead of them if they want to make it.
They don't have to win out, but they do have to beat Dallas when they play them this week.
Yes. We'll talk more about that in the Pavel Bures, but absolutely they have to beat Dallas, and their track record as of late has not been great.
No. So if that's the case, if they lose to Dallas, Dallas wins on Tuesday, that locks Dallas into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay. And then puts them 4 points back. So Nashville just needs 1 point to make that happen the rest of the way. It seems like a pretty cut and dry scenario of where we're going to end up.
Yeah, it does. And really with their play as of late, I don't have a ton of confidence in the Golden Knights to pull themselves out of this.
So let's talk about not just their play, but kind of the periphery of what's been happening with this team, because it's not just on the ice that they've been having issues.
And I'm so confused about what's going on. I mean, there are some hilarious things at play here. But let's talk about what happened this week with Robin Lehner, because he's been hurt, but then he came back. He played a really crummy game, which in the post-game scrum, Pete DeBoer then threw him under the bus for, essentially saying our goalie needed to be better than their goalie, and he wasn't. And then news broke that Robin Lehner was having surgery because he was injured and his season would be over. And then Pete DeBoer said that he was going to be at practice and that he was going to start the next game. And now Robin Lehner's having surgery and his season's over.
And did suit up for last night's game. Didn't start, but backed up.
Well, and the game before that, they started him and they swapped him out after the first period and put the backup in a 1-1 game.
Just unreal that this is the case. That, I mean, it was happening, then it wasn't happening. It just seems like a big disconnect for a team that's, had its issues this year big time. But up until this point, it's kind of been the darlings of the NHL, right? Unless you're a team that's like in their division or been eliminated by them, I feel like a lot of people like Vegas because of what they've created.
Mm-hmm.
And this just seems very unplayer friendly. Like it seems like they're treating Robin Lehner pretty dirty with this one.
But they have a bit of a track record of that too, right? At least rumor has it. Like, here's where my head went when I heard all of this. Do you believe in karma, Carl?
I believe that you reap what you sow. Yes.
Because I think that there's a little bit of karma at play here. Like last year, their starting goalie won the Vezina Trophy. They turned around and traded him, and he found out via a tweet because the team neglected to tell him right away when he was traded. So that to me already is like kind of raising some flags in terms of player treatment, player management.
Yeah.
And now you've got this situation where, you know, we're obviously making assumptions in terms of player treatment, but it doesn't look good from where we're standing.
Certainly not. No.
And now they've lost their starting goalie, and they're now without a starting goalie. Vezina winning or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. And I think back as well to even further back than that. Do you remember the Nate Schmidt PED suspension?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And he threw that back onto the team. He's like, I took what the team doctors told me to take. They didn't do what they needed to do to take care of me.
Yeah.
And we look at Jack Eichel's, surgery situation. And I think for some people, it became pretty easy to look at that and be like, well, Vegas is letting him get his surgery. They must be good. The rest of the sample size says otherwise.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Dadonov trade is another example of that, or the attempted trade to not have the list. Whoever's fault that ended up being, I think like you have to know the details of your players' contracts.
Or at least like have an open line of communication with them, right?
Yes.
Like, hey, I know that you shouldn't like publicize everything to players. You don't want them like, if they're not going to get dealt, losing confidence, but like talk to the guy's agent, figure out like, hey, there's a chance you might get traded. Your no movement clause isn't in place, right? Solves a lot of hassle down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. So this team, they just seem to act impulsively without a huge kind of concern for their players. I mean, like we've been saying it for a year or two now, like don't plan on staying in Vegas long-term because they're flipping guys constantly.
Yeah.
And that seems to be catching up with them a little bit.
A little bit. And I think, seeing where they are in these standings, and maybe we'll save a little deeper dive for a certain station that we might need to use later. We've got a lot to talk about there. So I don't want to get too deep into Vegas roster, but lots to happen there.
Yeah.
All right, let's head out east. We've looked at the West playoffs. Let's head out east. The Florida Panthers have locked up. They are the number 1 seed in the West, winning that division. Just like last week, every team has guaranteed their playoff spot. So no one's missing the playoffs at this point, but still a lot can change standings wise. We've got 4 teams from the Atlantic, 4 teams from the Metro. The Metro is not even won yet. The Hurricanes are 4 points up on the Rangers with 3 to go for them. So they only need, if they get a win this week, that locks it up for them.
Yeah.
And they're playing on Tuesday. I know you said that Vegas and Dallas was a must-watch game probably on Tuesday. Rangers, Carolina also play Tuesday.
That will also be a good game to watch.
Yeah. But that being said, then 0 spots except for the Panthers winning that Atlantic are locked up. Tampa could even jump ahead of the Leafs. The Bruins could catch Tampa. The Bruins could actually, if it went for them, they could even move up to the 2 seed. They could get home ice in the first round. A long shot, but possible.
Yeah, I think Toronto's schedule is pretty easy to close out the year.
So Toronto
is playing. Detroit. We've got Detroit tomorrow. It's rivalry night in my house. So guess what game I'm going to have fun watching?
And then they play Boston on Friday.
And then they play Boston.
Right. So if it all came down to it, that would be Boston's chance to make it. Boston does play the Panthers though. Panthers, Sabres. So I would think, and then Tampa, if we're looking just to round out the Atlantic, Tampa plays the Jackets twice and the Islanders.
So they've got the easiest schedule.
They do have the easiest schedule. Leafs only have 2 games. If the Leafs get a point, especially if they get the win in against Detroit, they finish second. Do you think it ends the way it is right now with Florida 1, Toronto 2, Tampa 3, and Boston in the wild card?
Kind of. I think so. Like with Tampa's ease of schedule to close out the year and the way that they've been scoring the last week, like they put up 8 against Florida and they put up 8 against Toronto last week alone.
It's crazy what they're able to do right now.
So, like I have faith in the Leafs stealing the point that they need from Detroit. If they had a harder matchup, I'd say Tampa has a chance to leapfrog them. But as it stands, Tampa's going to finish third, and we're going to get Toronto-Tampa in the first round.
Yeah, and I would say that is, I mean, Leafs fans always are wanting to avoid Boston because it just brings up so many bad memories. But Tampa, it's a terrible matchup for the Leafs.
Awful. it's awful. I'm not going to be in a happy house next week, Carl.
No. Hey, at least it's going to be like Daryl Sutter said about playing the Avalanche in the playoffs. At least it'll be a short 8 days.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know how that series is going to go. Like, realistically, Toronto can beat Tampa. Talent-wise, they match up pretty good, I think.
Oh, I think they do a very similar thing to what Tampa does, right? They can outscore you. They aren't as good defensively as Tampa is, and they're not as good in net. That's the problem, is that I look at the Tampa matchup, I look at the Leafs matchup, and I say Tampa can do everything that the Leafs can do better, except for score. And they've, like you said, 8 goals per game this week maybe makes me wrong in that regard too.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one for the Leafs. Not to mention all the baggage they carry on their shoulders heading into the playoffs.
Paul McLean took that baggage off. It's fine. The walrus spoke and things happened.
All right, so that's Tampa, Toronto.
We got to look at the Metro though, because again, the matchup between those first round is set by this, and also the order of the wild card, right? So we have Pittsburgh cannot get up to catch the Rangers. So Rangers, Hurricanes are 1 or 2. They do play this week. So if the Rangers can win against the Hurricanes, they actually got a pretty good test because they're playing Montreal and then the Capitals, who there's a chance that that's who the Metro faces off against is the Capitals.
Could be. Yeah. You know what? Before this week, I would have said no way Carolina's going to lock up that first spot, but they've lost both of their goalies now.
So who's in net for Tampa or for Carolina?
That's a great question, Carl. But I'm pretty sure I saw yesterday or the day before that Ranta had to leave the game because he got injured.
Yeah, he did. He left against the Islanders. And in that game, let me just double check here who it was who came in. Probably
pull it up too. It's the prediction we had for the Hurricanes at the start of the year when it came to their goalies is coming true in the last week of the season.
Right, because just last week you said like, oh, we said that they wouldn't be good, but they managed to pull it off so far. Well, not so much.
I feel like that's just Peter. Kochetkov.
Peter Kochetkov. Okay.
You ever heard of him?
I haven't, but he's had very little time in the NHL. A high draft pick though, 2019 second round pick, only 22 years of age. A big unknown there.
Big unknown. He's only played 2 games and they just happened, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And so, could come out and be great. Very likely not though, right? With what you know about goalies and just kind of how they come in. Yet, Antti Ranta had been playing well enough to keep these Hurricanes winning games.
Yeah, man. This is very unfortunate for them. It's a scary situation because not only is this guy just, starting his NHL career, he's like being thrown into the frying pan. And the frying pan's been preheated for 82 games. So it's very hot in there.
What was they trying to cook in that frying pan?
They're trying to cook some penguin meat.
Ooh, can you eat? I've never heard of people eating penguin.
I don't know.
They're endangered.
I assume they do. Are penguins endangered?
Aren't they? Maybe they're not.
I hope not. They're so cute.
Yeah. But I feel like the amount of them, Here. Well, let's go to this website and it'll tell me what penguin meat tastes like. That's literally the first thing you look up. So apparently because of in 1959, rules were put in place with Antarctica that do not allow you to eat penguins. So it is illegal to eat in almost every country.
Okay. That's good.
But I would assume it would taste like turkey, like a darker, redder poultry.
Maybe. I don't even know if that analogy makes sense. Like, I don't even know if the Penguins would be in that frying pan. It could be, I guess, if Carolina falls to second.
They could be. So do you think the Rangers, with that injury and what we know, Rangers only 4 back. If they beat the Hurricanes, they are 2 points back with 2 games left. It still seems pretty tough.
It does seem pretty tough. I think the Hurricanes gave themselves enough space there.
Yeah. So likely Hurricanes, but then Boston and Washington, right? Washington's 1 point back at Pittsburgh, so they could jump up. They don't even have to jump up to beat Boston. And I think that's what you want, right? Like you want to pass Boston. You want Boston. If I'm Washington, I want Boston to win and I want Pittsburgh to lose because I want to go for that 3 seed instead of facing Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd much rather take the Rangers. And they've got the Islanders, and the Rangers. Like you just said a few minutes ago.
Washington does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the question that they take that 3 seed spot. And on the last game of the season, we get a first round preview. Like the Penguins have the Oilers and the Blue Jackets left.
Yeah. And that Oilers game could be tough. They do. I mean, Casey DeSmith played fine enough with Tristan Jarry out, but Louis Domingue has not, right? There's a reason that he was the 3 there in Pittsburgh. And at least it gives some certainty to who they are going with in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Do we have an update on Tristan Jarry? Is he like out first round kind of thing?
That's a great question.
I haven't seen anything.
No, I haven't either. And they said week to week, right?
They said week to week, and it's been a week. So is it this week?
Time to check in. It's time to check in.
To me, the vagueness of week to week is always it's long term. But go ahead.
And it's literally no news since that statement that he's week to week. So
it's scary, man.
I would say that they have to be under the assumption that he is not coming back in this playoff run.
That would be my guess as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, so there you go. That's the playoff picture. Next week we'll be here. I mean, we kind of touched on some of these, so maybe we'll touch less on them. But once we get some matchups locked down, next week will be our playoff preview. We get into all of that. Still some news of this week. Let's just briefly touch before we head to break here. Let's briefly touch on another week, another hockey great gone.
Yeah. Guy Lafleur passed away this week after I think a lengthy battle actually with lung cancer, I believe.
Yeah. Never a good way to go, never a good way to have to touch on the passing, but I mean, much like Mike Bossy last week, great part of the community and the kind of the hockey culture that's been built up there in Montreal, but also just, I mean, fantastic on ice production.
Oh yeah, of course. And like Lafleur, I have this weird thing in my head when it comes to Montreal Canadiens legends, because they've won so much through different eras. I always get confused about which players played with each other. Mm-hmm. So Guy Lafleur did not play with guys like Jean Beliveau or Rocket Richard. Like they were 50s. Lafleur was 70s. Lafleur was a kind of a different style of hockey, but he as a player played a different style than the rest of the league played. Yeah. And like, man, he was just a highlight reel player.
Oh, absolutely. You go back, you watch the old highlights, and it's fantastic, like what he could do and just the way that there wasn't an answer for him. Right.
Yeah.
Talking about eras and different things. He retired in 1991. Like he came back, played 2 seasons one with the Rangers and 2 with the Nordiques. So one of those guys that just kept coming back to hockey, and hockey will certainly miss him. I tried to find out this week which children's TV show, much like Mike Bossy led us to raccoons, what Guy Lafleur would lead us to. Nothing,
hey? He was more adult. I think he released a whiskey a couple of years ago.
You know what? I think I might have tasted that one.
I think you might have, yeah.
Well,
but here's a question to lead us into break, okay? Do you think the main character in Dodgeball and Underdog Story was named after Guy Lafleur?
No, because Guy Lafleur wasn't really like an underdog.
No, he was not.
He was a front runner. First overall draft pick.
Was he first overall draft pick?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Drafts were weird back then.
When there's 8 teams picking.
Yeah.
I guess 14 at that point in time, but yeah.
Plus everyone's scouting abilities would have been different.
Yes, for sure. I don't know many of the players, but you got to think that the California Golden Seals are pretty upset with the fact that they traded that pick to Montreal.
Honestly, in the NHL at that time, they were probably told they had to trade that pick to Montreal.
Yeah, somehow in that season, Montreal had 3 first-round picks. 3 of the 14 were Montreal.
That's crazy. But the league was funky back then. What year was that? Sometime in the 60s?
1971.
He was drafted in 71. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So he came into the league early.
Yeah. It was a good draft for the Habs. They also grabbed Larry Robinson that year. Marcel Dion was drafted by the Red Wings as well.
Yeah. So the Habs just drafted their whole dynasty team that year.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. All our best to the Dion, or not the Dion, the Lafleur family.
The Lafleurs.
And we'll see you after the break. Three, 2, 1.
So speaking of old guys who just keep going in the game of hockey, I learned last week that Ryan Getzlaf was still playing in the league.
Who knew?
There's a name I had not heard in a while. I mean, I'm sure we covered it when we eliminated the Ducks, but it's just like the Ducks have just fallen out of relevance for me. And therefore, Ryan Getzlaf has. But he's retiring after this year.
He's officially done. What's nice is he got a point in his last game, which is
a nice touch. That is nice. So the Ducks are done at this point. They have no more games left?
No, he's just done. Suited up for the Ducks final, I believe, their final home game.
Oh, and that was just his last game?
Yeah, he's like, I guess wanted to be at home, which seems fair.
That's nice, but like he's just gonna he's the captain of the team. He's just gonna you guys figure out their last 2 games.
Yeah, it's 2 games. What they're playing the Sharks and the Stars. He's like, you know what? I'm gonna stay.
I don't wanna.
I'm the captain. I don't have to play if I don't want to. He's like Phil Kessel, but instead of game practice, it's games.
So he didn't do a full Sedin tour. Like he didn't do the whole season.
No, I mean injury, etc. But yeah, 56 games, all he got this season.
And he just announced his retirement a few weeks ago. So he got a bit of a tour in. He got a few handshakes. He got to take a face off against Corey Perry.
I think that's what everyone wants in life, isn't it?
Take a face off against Corey Perry. Yeah. Gives you a chance to just whack at his ankles unprovoked.
Hey, whatever it takes, right?
That's what everybody wants.
What will be your kind of like legacy or memory of Ryan Getzlaf?
For me, specifically on Ryan Getzlaf, it's the 2010 Olympic team. He was on that team, I believe. Yeah, that is the one I'm thinking of, right?
Yep.
Vancouver. Yeah. He was on that team and he was a big part of that team too. So that is always the memory I'll have of him. The other thing, whenever I hear his name, the thought process in my head goes, oh yeah, Ryan Getzlaf. He played a lot of years on the Mighty Ducks when they didn't win. And then I remember he won a Stanley Cup very early on. He was on that 2007 team, I think. that won the cup.
Interesting fact, Ryan Getzlaf was still on the Ducks. He was on the Ducks for so long that he was on them when they were still mighty. His first season, they were the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim.
Those were the days.
Wish we still had him.
Yeah,
but
I do.
Enjoy retirement, Ryan.
Do you think he'll be in a Hall of Fame discussion in the next few years?
I think discussion, absolutely. Yeah. It seems like a thing that people would want to do. Talk about putting Ryan Getzlaf in there. And I think it's mostly warranted. I think the Stanley Cup helps him big time. The lack of personal awards is what's going to hurt him.
Yeah, true. Anyways, good stuff, Ryan. Good career, long career.
Yeah, and all
17
with one team.
years, and all with one team. It's pretty rare. So enjoy your retirement with that giant like ATV 4-wheeler they gave you.
I thought you were going to say giant forehead. It's time now for the Elimination Station.
All right.
Elimination Station.
Welcome back to the Elimination Station. This is where we take some teams and we take them out of the playoffs. And we're here, right? This is the last episode of the regular season. So we have to figure out what to do with the problem at hand.
Yeah, because we have previously eliminated the Dallas Stars. Probably we did it illogically. It was definitely executed out of emotion. And now we got to decide, do we leave them in the elimination station or do we take them out because we think they're a lock for the playoffs? Where are you at with this, Carl?
I think that the Dallas Stars, sitting 3 points up on Vegas, are a lock to make the playoffs.
I think so too, but I hate them so much.
I mean, I hear you. No one wants Jamie Benn to have success. That's not what we're here for.
His goals are regular season only, by the way, the ones we're tracking.
Oh, don't worry. I had a conversation with some listener folk yesterday about like if we count every episode or just the main numbered episodes as them. So I was trying to make sure that we got everything that we needed. But I think we decided it's only mainline numbered episodes.
Okay. We're still ahead.
I think that's what me and you decided.
Yeah, right? I think so too.
Yeah, it's unfortunate though.
Well, that's like for him, we're only counting regular season goals.
That's right. And he's still sitting at 329. Where we're up to this is 377 right now. So
yeah. I'm feeling like okay about it.
About our chances?
Yeah. You're not.
No, but if we padded our stats and counted them all, then I'd feel way better.
So the Dallas Stars are going to be in the playoffs.
I think so. Yeah.
So we got to take them out of the elimination station.
Welcome out of the elimination station, Dallas.
And welcome to the elimination station, the Vegas Golden Knights.
And the Vancouver Canucks.
And the Vancouver Canucks. That one was more of a given, though. I guess we got to do both, hey?
The ones mathematically eliminated probably should be there, which is great. I mean, it feels good. I mean, it doesn't feel good after it takes someone out, but it feels good that we only had one mathematically eliminated team in the elimination station all year. Yeah,
that's true, hey? Never thought about that.
The East made it easy on us. In our final retirement tour, they made it easy.
They did make it easy for us, but the Central made it tough for us.
Yeah. So let's start with Vancouver. It's a little easier, and we haven't talked about them yet. So where are you going? What's a positive thing that the Vancouver Canucks have going for them?
I think their goaltending's good.
Yeah.
I
Demko's been good.
I have faith in Thatcher Demko. I think he can be their guy, and they can put their trust in him.
I almost called him Patrick Demko. That's nobody.
Thatcher Demko. It's way more a rich kid than Patrick.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Thatcher.
You know that he went to the good goalie camps.
Yeah, exactly. Thatcher Demko. Where's he from? Did we ever play this game?
We haven't played that game in a while. I'm going to guess Canada, though.
Nope. You know where he's from? San Diego, California.
Ooh, yeah, that kid definitely, Thatcher Demko definitely was a wealthy kid. I mean, I'm sure we can look it up, and like he probably like wasn't. I'd feel bad if he had like some tough upbringing, but
yeah, I mean, we're making wild assumptions here about somebody based solely on their name.
Have you ever heard of a single other person in the world named Thatcher, though?
I mean, it's got to be out there. I personally never have.
No.
And I don't know a Thatcher.
I'm not making fun of it, but I don't know anyone with the first name Thatcher.
It's a weird name for sure. The Canucks have other good things going for them.
Okay.
I mean, JT Miller had a great season.
JT Miller had an outstanding season.
He had the kind of season that you'd think Elias Pettersson would have.
Which is one of the downsides of the Canucks this year.
Yeah. I mean, he still scored 32 goals. Pettersson did. But he needs to be better than that.
I mean, during this final stretch, in the Bruce Boudreau era, he definitely came back to his previous self. Not even fully back, but just like better, right? Oddly enough, it all it took to unlock some offense with this team was Bruce Boudreau, which seems surprising and confusing. It just tells you how bad
Hilarious.
Travis Green was at what he was doing there.
Totally.
I think so you look at like they still have so much young talent on this team, right? Like they still have Quinn Hughes. They still have Elias Pettersson. Brock Besser is still there, even though every trade deadline the media tries to trade Brock Besser. So look at him to be on who's getting traded at the draft lists. That's going to happen. And yet they still also have this collection and smattering of like significantly overpaid bottom six guys.
As is tradition in Vancouver.
That's what they do.
Give us some of those names, Carl. Remind the people.
Tanner Pearson.
Yep.
I would put Connor Garland in that category.
As would I.
Michael Furlan's on IR, but he's signed for next year as well.
Yep.
So those are, I mean, that's an entire line I just listed. That's making 3.5, 5 plus 3. So like almost $12 million for that line.
Yeah. It's crazy because like in a vacuum, I don't know if I'd say any of those players are overpaid individually, but that's a lot of them to have on one team.
Well, and that's the issue, right? Is when you are so bad for so long at drafting, you have to have this situation, right? Because most teams that are successful, right? You look at Florida. I mean, they have done not a lot for bottom six signings.
Yeah.
Look at a team like Tampa, where they're up against the cap. The Leafs, who are up against the cap, these guys, they're filling it with veteran minimum guys, which is what the Leafs are doing, but also Tampa's just drafting well and bringing up these guys to play those minutes. And they're not paying to have someone show up because they can roster an NHL competent player themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes a little bit of luck, but you also have to make your own luck, right? Like you alluded to with Tampa, drafting and scouting properly and developing properly.
And developing them. It takes something to be able to turn, I mean, to take an Elias Pettersson and turn him into something, to take Brock Besser and Bo Horvat and have them become pieces. They've done that to a degree with some of these guys, but the bottom isn't there.
Now, that being said, like the future is bright for this team, right?
Probably. I mean, with what they have, right? What would it take for you to think that this is a playoff team next year?
Oh man. I mean, first of all, Elias Pettersson has to be that elite centerman.
Correct. Yep.
Right? Like he needs to take the next step for sure.
Or even just return to last year's step. I'd be fine with that. If he was what he was last year, next year, great.
Yeah. Yeah. So that absolutely has to happen.
Do you want to take that?
No, I'll call my mom back after.
Oh, poor mom having to wait. Well, let's hurry this up then.
She'll be fine. Yeah. Look, I think that the Canucks have some bright spots that are going to get better for them in the coming years, but I kind of feel like that next year they're going to be in the same spot.
I feel like they'll be a fringe playoff team, barring some sort of big move, which I don't really see what that could be.
Well, we'll see what a full season of Bruce Boudreau does to these guys.
Yeah, I hear that. All right. One down, one more to go. The Vegas Golden Knights. They've got a lot going on.
Oh,
and one thing that you mentioned that had me wondering, and I wanted to save it for here, is that no one should ever feel comfortable on Vegas.
Yeah.
Who is it who's gone this season?
I don't know. Because like any one of these guys that they trade could be considered a trade-off. I mean, look, Dadonov, I think we can safely assume that he'll be moved.
They have his no trade list now. They can figure that part out.
Yeah, like I feel like the damage is done there, and that's probably going to happen.
Yep.
I don't know, like what are we talking about cap situation here, right? The cap's going to be what next year?
1 million more than it is this year. So it'll be up to 82.5.
82.5. And currently next year, their projected cap hit is almost $84 million.
Yeah. So they're $1.5 million over the cap with even some guys coming off of it, right? Like I know he's on IR right now, but name is slipping my mind right now. Riley Smith. He's gone. Other than that, really no one's contract is coming up.
Man, it could be anyone. Alec Martinez. I mean, he's older, might be harder to move, but wouldn't surprise me. One of William Karlsson or Jonathan Marchessault. The question is like these big three contracts at the top of their list, like Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty. I think you can safely assume Mark Stone's not going anywhere. He's a captain. He's signed long-term. And same with Jack Eichel, right?
They just gave up that big package to get him.
But those guys aren't going anywhere. So maybe Pacioretty.
Well, 1 year at $7 million with Pacioretty, I think that's something that you could find a team interested to take on that health risk that comes with him, because that's the problem with those big three is you spent, $27 million, $26.5 million this year of cap space on those three guys. And none of them were healthy the entire year. They were actually all missed extremely significant chunks of this season. And with 1 year left on the deal, Vegas, I would be surprised if Pacioretty got past the draft still on this team.
You don't even think he'll make it to draft day, hey?
I think draft day, but I think draft weekend, he is not on this team anymore by the time that's done.
Yeah, like they're going to have to shed some of this cap space. Like they're not moving Pietrangelo.
No. And I wouldn't expect them to. They just signed him, right? And as much as they are mistreating players, that's a bad sign when you sign someone to a long-term deal and then try to move them immediately.
Yeah. So, I feel like we've named half the team at this point, but some of the names we just said, Pacioretty, Karlsson, Marchessault, Martinez, none of them would surprise me.
No. I think that's going to happen.
And then in addition to that too, is the fallout from this Robin Lehner situation. Because as brutal as the Golden Knights can be, like Robin Lehner is a pretty outspoken, vocal guy too. Like he could stir a bit of the pot with the media as well.
And I wouldn't describe him as brutal. I'd say, I mean, he stands up for what he thinks is right. And at this point in time, I mean, if he's not happy with how this team is handling him and his injuries and his health, he has every right to stand up and air that grievance publicly.
He'll let us know.
Absolutely.
But like, what does that mean for the future of that relationship? Because they've got him for 3 more years.
Yeah. And Logan Thompson clearly is not good enough in net.
Yeah.
So what do they do?
Yeah. So that could be a question mark.
Yeah. And so I very much agree, right? I think that could definitely be a big problem for them moving into this next season. So I think Vegas is one team that's going to be pretty busy this offseason because they have to be.
Yeah.
They have to find some ways.
Yeah. Well, this season is it's a huge disappointment, right? There's no getting around that. This is like unacceptable. Them missing the playoffs.
Absolutely. They did the Tampa thing where you overspend, you have guys who are injured and off, but like unlike Tampa, those guys couldn't actually get healthy. They were getting them back in the lineup as fast as they could because they needed them to make the playoffs. And now they've played this cap game all year and it very much doesn't pay off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's embarrassing for them, and it's got to be unacceptable. So they're going to make a splash to change things up to get back to where they should be next year.
Yeah,
they were a cup favorite, man.
And if you were to list this roster off to me, they still should be.
Yeah.
Because they were a cup favorite and then added Jack Eichel.
Yeah.
Not completely unacceptable. Like you said, disappointment for sure. I would say they're back in the playoffs next year, though, aren't they?
Yeah. Yes. They have to be. They have to be.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to say about this team. Like, they choked this year.
Big time. And across the board. So, all right. That's it. Elimination Station. The final elimination station in the history of the show, Nick, is done.
It's done. And it ended with the Golden Knights of all teams. It started with, who did we start with? I got it here. It started with the Arizona Coyotes and ended with the Vegas Golden Knights.
It is surprising. I mean, that's a fun little piece of trivia for down the road.
The 20-year anniversary.
Yeah, sure. It's 2042. The Arizona Coyotes are now playing at your local rec rink in Arizona. They decided, we're just going to go smaller and smaller. That's actually just the rink outside of the YMCA. It's great. They only ever play outdoor games. It's exactly what Gary Bettman wants. Outdoor games and Arizona hockey. It's perfect.
That's his legacy.
There it is. All right, let's take a look then as we head to this final week of the season, we are going to head to the Pavel Burys, our must-watch games of the week, the games that you need to tune into because they have direct playoff implications or, like tonight's game, are completely meaningless. So, tomorrow.
Yeah, I feel like this is already going to be contentious.
Big games, multiple big games. Every team that has something to play for in the playoffs is playing against a playoff team tomorrow.
Yeah. I have to say, Carl, I still think this Vegas Dallas game is the game tomorrow.
I think so, but just to list off the other games that are happening. Carolina and the Rangers, Edmonton and the Penguins. There was one other, Flames Preds. These are all playoff versus playoff matchups. Big day tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wednesday, though.
Oh, man. Not playoff matchup. How about we go west and go LA Seattle?
Sure. Let's do it. Get the Kraken one last high sticking game this season.
One last crack at it.
They're Kraken one more attempt.
Thursday?
I think I'm looking at, could be a playoff preview of Preds Avs. We have Wild Flames. Those are only the 2 games of playoff team versus playoff team. They're kind of meaningless games.
Yeah, I think Nashville, Colorado is the most interesting one.
Unless we do Tampa, Columbus?
No.
Okay. Nashville, Colorado it is. On to Friday.
I feel like we should do Boston, Toronto.
There's 3 that I think are important to choose from. Boston, Toronto, Washington and the Rangers, and Vegas and St. Louis. Vegas is very likely eliminated by this point, but that is Vegas's last game of the season.
I think we don't do Vegas since we've both said tonight that they're not going to make the playoffs. So
okay,
doesn't matter.
Boston, Toronto. Boston's last ditch attempt to make it in. That is going to be the last main day. Most teams finish that day. I said it's the Kraken's last game. I forgot that Jets game was against the Kraken. So the final day of the NHL season, Sunday, May 1st, Kraken versus Jets.
That's the only game on?
Yes.
It's a 2 p.m. start here too.
Oh, they've set it up for failure.
Brutal.
But that's it. So we have, let me pull up the standings, because with each of these, you head over to our Twitter at Fourth Line Podcast with the number 4 in it. And for each of those games, you tell us who's going to win the game. Tell us who's going to win the game. Then tell us the score of that game. If you pick the winning team, you get 1 point. If you pick that, you're eligible for bonus points. Each score correct gets you an extra bonus point, and it is tight at the top. As of right now, Adam Cull is leading Matt from his host of podcasts, but at Reasons Are on Twitter by 3 points. Behind him, Rapidonian, 3 points back again, and another 3 points back. So the top 4 are separated by 9 points, top 5 separated by only 10. So it is tight at the top. We are handing out a jersey at the end of this week. Next week's show, the leading point getter for high sticking gets a jersey. Excited to get that out there.
Very exciting.
And then we reset it and we do it all over again and hand out another jersey at the end of the playoffs.
Yeah. Do we have to come up with new rules for the playoffs?
I was thinking about that today, because we asked the people playing if they wanted to continue doing scores, and they said yes. They said this is more fun than over under. And so we could do scores. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more work when there's like 4 games, sometimes 5 games a night that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought for the first round, we just do winner. Pick who wins the game. If you want to practice, get some warm-ups in for games and scores, sure. But I'm only handing out points for scores.
I like that. And then as the playoffs go on, it gets progressively harder.
It gets harder, but also then there's less games. So if we're adding extra points in, then each round is a similar amount of value.
Yeah. Yeah. But because the first round is the easiest, this is your if you're playing, this is your chance to really build up a ton of points.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it fair so that you can still come back. So first round, it's 1 point possible per game.
Yeah.
You only get 1 and you're just picking the winner. The rest of it will do winner and score. So possible 3 points per game.
I like it.
Perfect. All right. So we'll remind you all about that next week when we fire it up, but games are going to be on next Monday. Obviously schedules aren't set yet, but look out for those in the coming days. For more about our show, head to thefourthlinepodcast.com, play high sticking, and just hang out with us on Twitter at Fourth Line Podcast with the number 4. Like I said, I saw a lot of people leaving the Twitters today. I don't know if you spent much time on there. A lot of folks on Twitter, a lot of Twitter users not happy with the whole Elon Musk situation.
Logging off, hey? I was wondering if people would be signing off for the last time.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're signing off for the last time later this year, but
has nothing to do with
yet.
Elon, though.
It's not. No, he's paying us to stop. That's actually what's happening.
Yeah, $43 billion.
43. We did it for a little bit less than that. It was $43. That's what it took.
Exactly.
It was Darren Helm's number. We said, he's the last Av/Red Wing that we can celebrate. That's what we want.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're actually going to owe $43 in fees at the end of this too. So
yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know how we messed that up, but so there we go. Subscribe. We'll be there for you every Monday. We'll be here through the playoffs, through free agency, and then who knows what. And we hang up the skates forever, but not yet. See you next week.
It's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. Vegas can't escape their fate. Their playoff chance is gone. Just like I can't escape these calls from my mom.